Hello, welcome to the Women Who STEM the Gap podcast, an IIT Delhi and Co Impact initiative. I am Ridhima Sharma, and I'm excited to bring you the insights and experiences of some incredible women in STEM. In this episode, I will be speaking with Dr. Preeti Agalya, Professor of Chemical Engineering at IIT Madras and the first woman director in charge of an IIT campus at IIT Madras Zanzibar. You can learn more about her work in the description below. Today I have with me Dr. Preeti Agalyam, a chemical engineering professor at IIT Madras, marathon runner, and the very first woman to lead an IIT as a director in charge of IIT Madras's first offshore campus in Zanzibar. Thank you so much for speaking with me, Dr. Agalyam. It's really a pleasure to have you here. Just to start off, could you tell us something about your background and your journey in STEM?
Thank you, Ridhima, for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I'm from Mysore in Karnataka, and I grew up in an academic family. My parents, grandfather, everybody was in academia. It's basically familiar ground for me. And in fact, right from high school or so, all I wanted to be was a professor. Dad was a chemistry professor. So all the conversations at home were about, let's think about what is the phenomena behind this. How does this work? And analyzing it from a scientific perspective. And after IIT Madras BTech, I studied abroad. And by then it was very clear that what I wanted to do was be in academia. I was also very invested in the idea of being in academia in India. So though I went abroad for my master's and PhD and a short stint as postdoc, it was always the intention to come back to India. I came into the chemical engineering department at IIT Bombay. That was my first, aside from the postdoc, the full-time career and job, I should say. And those were really 7 very memorable years where, the interest I had in being in academia and being in teaching and research was honed very well. I believe that I had extremely good mentoring and support and friendships and relationships made in the IIT Bombay chemical engineering department. But at one point, our family took a decision to move to Chennai. And that's when I said, it was a little bit, mixed feeling, I would say, of going back to where you did your undergraduate, rubbing shoulders with very senior professors that you were unruly in their class when you were an undergraduate, and now you're next door in your office with them. But I think it was a very warm and welcoming space. And of course, now I've been for 20 years in IIT Madras. I think it's sort of running in my veins almost. And the loyalty to IIT Madras is very strong. And in every job, there are definitely frustrations, but literally, it feels like this is such a good fit for me because you wake up on Monday mornings, there's going to be a crazy set of things through the week, but you feel ready for it. I've been so proud of the directions IIT Madras has been taking. I think it's important for institutions of our stature to really show the way of how science and technology should be used for bettering the conditions for everybody. So I'm proud that we are looking at it, I think, with the right kind of lens in terms of inclusivity, in terms of addressing sustainability, addressing everything from a sustainability lens, embracing and celebrating diversity and so on. So while, of course, the important aspect for me is the STEM side of it, and it's really exciting that I've managed to fulfill, I think, a dream that was there when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. But I'm also happy that the color of the path that we are taking, or the dream that I dreamed, has also been evolving and changing. And it feels very gratifying for sure.
Thank you so much. And you mentioned that you have experienced a lot of warm, welcoming environments, a lot of mentoring that has happened. Is there any one key individual or experience that influenced your journey? The way perhaps, say, young people might be looking up to you right now?
There are many, actually. And I think it would be hard to pick just one. If I was forced to pick one, then I would have to say, my dad, first of all. So I'm going to take a little bit of liberty and say several people have influenced me. So if I had to pick the most important influence, I would say it would be my dad. My dad has, in fact, he passed away many years ago, more than 20 years ago now. But still, it feels like, and when I'm on the brink of every decision, big or small, there is a little bit of a voice from him. I would be doing a disservice to my mom, who's stood by me through everything. Even today, like just before this call, also she messaged me because I didn't call her this morning. She said, "Is everything okay?" And I messaged her quickly saying, "I'll finish this call and give you a ring." And I get such very different things from my parents, and which is also amazing for me, because my mom is all hard work, put your head down, and pummel through the challenges kinds, which also I like to do. I like to put in, and I also tell the young people that I interact with that hard work always has its return. Don't worry, this is big work, small work, it's my station, not my station. Don't worry about anything. Just get yourself busy mentally, physically, and it helps. And I feel that I get that part of my personality from my mom. Wake up early in the morning and do a bunch of things, kind of thing. And also from my dad, just thinking things through before doing it, and having a framework, and developing a philosophy of how you approach life in general, or specific situations in particular. And also, of course, the strong focus on what you can just call maybe the scientific method of logically stringing through arguments and following that. And the passion for life in academia, I think I get that from, and teaching particularly. A lot of passion for teaching comes from my dad, because I've seen him even when he was, more than 60 years old, take notes the night before class, and he'd say every class, he'd say things like every set of students is different. They ask different questions, and it's my job to be prepared for the things that they ask, and to kindle that interest in them, not necessarily to stuff concepts down their throat, but to kindle the interest in them. So I mean, of course, I have developed my own thoughts on teaching and other aspects over the years, in his absence, definitely. But I feel that voice, that it feels like a little bit of a guidance, is always there. But also my advisor in MIT, he was my postdoc advisor, and he is such a lovely person. And you're a top-notch researcher, top of the heap, so in an institution like MIT. But I really liked how much of a good, nice person he is. And that wasn't a character I picked up from other colleagues or other professors frequently. So and of course, we are still in touch. We try to meet, definitely converse every once in a while. But I feel that is important. You should be warm-hearted. You should be human. all the science, all the research excellence that you go after is not as much worth as the kind of human relationship that you have with people around you, whether it's staff or students or colleagues or superiors and so on. I think all of these, every one of these relationships are important.
No, of course. And it's really so wonderful to hear that you've had so many inspiring, influential people around you in your personal life as well as your professional life. I just wanted to circle back to what question that I had. I read in one of your interviews about how the situation when you were in your undergrad, you were one of 5 girls in a class of 45 students, right? And you said that that was slightly difficult, but it was a character building experience. Could you share maybe one or two anecdotes from your undergraduate time? What did you learn, or how did you navigate that space?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We were a minority for sure. And these days, of course, there's a little bit of better recognition that it matters that that we haven't that our numbers are small and that it should be larger, and let's make efforts, etc. So those in those days we were, I think, maybe not, I wouldn't say them, it's us. I think a little bit less conscious of it. We felt good that we were this many girls at least. It's 5 is more than 1 or 0 or whatever. So, and we used to actually we're still friends, all of us. We were 20 in the batch across the various departments. We are still such good friends. We plan outings together. We meet every time we're in each other's city. We have a really vibrant WhatsApp group where we share everything, jokes and photos and celebrations and even difficulties, family, older part members of the family passing away, all that stuff also we share, and I think we're still very close. But in those days, couple of things that used to really get our goat was, for example, there were a bunch of us interested in participating in cultural events, debates, and elocution competitions, or to be part of the drama troupe, and so on. But it used to be like there was one girls' hostel, and information would just not trickle to the girls' hostel for some reason. If you coincidentally happened to be in the boys' hostel, which was okay, but it could be a lot of waste of time and smelly. So we didn't used to probably go there. So if you happen to be there, you may have incidentally found the advertisement or the banner, brochure saying that here's a competition, cultural competition that as IIT, IIT Madras, you can participate in somewhere in the city. But there was never an effort to also make sure that the girls' hostel gets. But we were very keen. We said, we want to do this. So we did, I think, a couple of things. One is that there'd be some women's colleges, right? And the women's colleges would really only invite women-only teams in Chennai. So we said, at least these should be where we are going, where we are representing IIT Madras, even if it feels like it's a selection among a smaller group, so be it. I mean, it's still a selection among a smaller group of only women. So we started going to those, and they were really fun also, actually, because there'd be informal events. We were, with dumb charades. We didn't know anything. What is even dumb charades? But 3 of us would sit down and practice. This is what I'll say for this. This is what I'll clue for this. And there'd be really cool but fun events that we'd go to. Maybe spend half a day over there and feel good and come back. So we said, we're participating. Maybe it's not as inclusive as it could be, but at least we're getting a chance to participate. And then, once you break some of these barriers at one time, then it's like you open the floodgates. So people would tell us that, look, next year's event is on such and such a date, and here's the information about it. And then it's incumbent upon us to not then hold the information to ourselves and spread it. So that was one thing that we did. towards the end of our BTech. So one of our professors reached out and he said that I want to host a different kind of cultural festival at IIT Madras, because what we have so far, there was some way in which it didn't sit well with him. But when he asked for all our student secretaries would be men, because they were whatever 80% of the population, and you stand for election and you're going to get voted, that sort of thing. In fact, in my memory, for the 4 years, there was only one girl who stood for elections, student secretary type of elections at the institute level. It was even the people that would get nominated or stand for election, all of it would be men. But so when he reached out to the men who were in these elected positions, they weren't keen. They said, "No, this we don't want to do," because I think tradition is important to people for various reasons, and it could just be that these are teenagers or 20-year-olds who just want to object to what professors suggest, right? Just because an old person is saying it must be wrong and boring, something like that. So they refused, and then when he asked us, we jumped at it. We said, "Here's a chance. Right? Here's a chance to be part of the story, be relevant." And of course the work was very hard. We had to slog a lot, but that we also welcome that, because again we felt like you're in this ecosystem now. That helped, I think. So we did a series of events. The scale at which our events were, it was nowhere close to the main cultural event that was being run, where we were also volunteers. We'd done a bunch of activities by that point of time as volunteers, or second in rung or sidekicks of in various ways, etc. We had done our time, but this we had a chance to lead the effort, carve out the way in which it should be done ourselves. And I remember that it was supposed to be something that was really India focused. So the quiz would be all about India. And then we had a speaking competition where we said that you can speak in any Indian language. We'll have a panel of judges who will be able to determine or give you some prizes based on whatever language. Telugu, it could be Assamese, whatever is your mother tongue, you can speak in that. I mean, it was small, but it felt real. And I still remember, it's almost 30 years. I still remember, I can still see a visual of one of the speeches that were made in the elocution competition. I can even see that we didn't get a room. So we did the prelims for the quiz, the written prelims for the quiz under the banyan tree. We sat everybody under the banyan tree and gave them the question papers, and we did that. And I think the older people, the professors, or in the city, we reached out to prominent persons to be judges, etc. They were very encouraging of these three young women who are trying to do things which seem a little bit off the beaten path, etc. It felt very encouraging, but I think that's one other set of experiences that I think was character building, definitely. Academically, I think it was okay once we found our stripes a little bit. I think we didn't feel cut off from the academic side of things, but it was in this other things that we wanted to do. We had.
Excellent. And you mentioned something that, doing a bunch of these events, finding your own way through, doing events with participating in events at women's colleges or running this different cultural event. Do you think that some of these experiences, they need to be, like you said, relevant and be included and be, representing your institution? Do you think these ideas influenced your work as a faculty member at IIT Bombay or at IIT Madras, especially since you were the convener of gender advancement for transforming institutions at IIT Madras? Do you think some of the recommendations or action points that came out of Gati's action plan were somewhere like, okay, I've had this experience, how do I kind of change these things for students who are coming in now?
Oh, 100%. Actually, even during my graduate school in the US, women were a minority. And, in chemical engineering, it still tends to be fairly conventional, traditional in mindset. I recently went to an annual chemical engineers conference in the US. It's the biggest one, and I haven't been in a few years. And I was zapped, I was floored at how many women there are. But I don't know if the mindsets have scaled up accordingly, although our numbers have increased. In many instances, all the numbers go up. So, although there are a number of women in terms of percentage, we may still be small. And in which case, some of the issues may still exist of not having the, what do you want? You want a identical or more or less identical set of opportunities irrespective of your gender is what I think you want. Not sure about that, but definitely those experiences, not only just having those experiences, right, constantly talking about them. I have written about many of these things as well. We discuss it, which is why I like fora like this, because it helps you reflect in a way that is constructive, that gives you a, what can I do to change the path for people that are, the next generation or the next to next generation, etc. So all of these have helped. But with Gati, we also had the opportunity, not only in Gati, but also I was chairperson of the Women's Forum at IIT Madras. And in formal and informal ways, I have tried to figure out what are the challenges that are still going on and what are things we can do. And as I said, because IIT Madras runs in my veins, I feel like this institution should show the way of how to do things better. And one of the things is to listen to the people that are in your institution, and see what are lacuna in how you're structuring your the way in which you operate. So as in Women's Forum, all those years outside even of formal roles like this, Gati, we could talk to a number of people. And, my generation maybe slightly, I don't know, our time it's not done, but it's there somewhere at the other end of the spectrum. So we talk to the young women, we talk to the undergraduates and research scholars, young faculty as well. And the issues that they articulated, again, reflect with a little bit of reflection on top of it, I believe has definitely helped think about how to do things the right way. By the way, I don't think the problem is solved. I think even the fact that we're having this conversation, your podcast is there, etc., is indicative of the condition that it's not yet all done and dusted, and we are going into the sunset all equal and everything is perfect. It's work in progress, but I think people are becoming more aware. I'm also glad to see that all these efforts have improved awareness, so that people that have the power are coming at it not in an antagonistic, I'm forced to make these changes in the way I operate kind of way, but with an understanding of why the change is needed and who should drive the change and what are specific ways in which this should our institution, for example, should evolve in order to do best for our young people. So I think it's good, but it's not the end of the road yet.
Thank you for sharing that. And being a part of the Women's Forum and being the chairperson of the Women's Forum and being the convener of Gati, like you said, the problem is not solved, but you have your listening ear, you're listening and having conversations with young people, faculty members, etc., about their issues and what can be done to solve it. Are there any one or two, say, action points that have come up that either have been implemented or in the works, and how do you think we can sustain these kinds of action plans that come out of conversations like Gati or other forums?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to work on increasing numbers and numbers across all the kinds of people that are in the institution, staff, research scholars, undergraduate students, faculty, and of course, faculty that are in leadership positions. I think it's important to do this. And up to now, I feel like the way we were doing it was let whatever comes in, come in, and we accept that. Now we are questioning why is it that we are getting such small numbers of women into our system? And it's the population is some 50-50, right? And it's not, it's probably not good to skew a lot in the other direction also and say that all these 45 chemical engineering seats will be for women. I don't think that makes sense. But get some sort of balance between what we have in say high schools as a percentage of women, then into our undergraduate in, classes, and then on into our research scholar groups and so on. So the population that's feeding your cohort that you're looking at, let's try and get at numbers and percentages that are similar to the input is what one thing that people are definitely now on board with. Action has already happened one way or the other. I mean, there are court rulings about our undergraduate composition, right? There's that. And within the system, we are mindful about how we include, at the entry point, at least in terms of eligible candidature, building awareness, going to areas where there are a lot more women that are potentially going to come into our system, talking to them about it. That has improved as well. And there are some, I think, sort of high points that matter. Like recently, my colleagues did a conference, or it was an electrical engineering conference, women in optics, something like that it was. And it was so beautiful. They got, and these are top-notch researchers, top quality research presentations, right? You cannot sneeze at the quality of play, but they did things around it which made it was really fun also, by the way, not bogged down heavy feeling. Like they did a quiz which they opened out to the general population as part of the conference activities, and that quiz was about women in science. And so if you are a quizzer, then you have to study about all the important women in science in India and abroad and everything if you want to win that quiz. And the quiz master, I know he does a really good, very interesting interactive type of thing. So that kind of activity where we are consciously thinking about, in any room, what is our population looking like? Are we being good enough in including the genders is one thing that action wise has certainly happened. So there have been action items already executed at the faculty recruitment, student recruitment levels for sure, but even in terms of the experiences on campus. For example, there's I think a high degree of consciousness and mindfulness in the way we do any meetings, any meeting room, any committee that we put together. And, these are not things that I am forcing or only the women faculty are, really wringing people's necks and say, include us, include us. We're not doing that. Everybody has now really, I think, become aware and conscious of the importance of doing this, right down from our director and everybody else. So I think action has certainly happened across the board in the institution.
Thank you. One of the things you mentioned is that we need to definitely improve numbers, right, in any room, whether it's at the undergraduate entry, pre-entry level, right up to the leadership positions that we have in any room. You have been in these leadership positions, and now you are the first, woman director in charge, and that has made all kinds of news all over India. What has your experience been like as one of the few? Like, you're conscious and you're aware that you're not yet as represented in those spaces. How do you deal with, I wouldn't say cultures of masculinity, but like generally, knowing that you don't necessarily have more women in the space with you?
I think because, again, I come from this chemical engineering, very traditional background, and I've always been in a minority. Any room, any meeting, any conference, all this time, all my professional career, I suddenly speak and my voice is the different kind, a mixture of frequencies than everybody else in the room, I feel. But everybody is in the professional space, everybody is really respectful. So I think that for me, actually, when I was talking to you earlier, I really wasn't thinking about myself in terms of I guess it's hard to put yourself into any of these frameworks in your head. Personal experience has been very good, and I think it's because of the way IIT Madras is thinking about the way about how we as an institution ought to be, right from the director down. Professor Kamakoti talked about the fact that I am going to be representing IIT Madras here as the head of this campus, and that it was important for IIT Madras to choose somebody that is going to represent us the best, and that understands the system, but also understands what is needed to be done in this new place to make it as successful or beyond as our parent institution. I would say I have also a lot of support. I can't deny that. It's not like, they say, oh, it's lonely at the top and stuff like that. But, it's not been like that at all, because I was, it's foolish to say that let's give this person a title. And then what does that title mean? Really, there's no, it's work, right? It's essentially work. And you alone cannot possibly come up with everything, articulate the problem, solve the problem. At what level? You can maybe do it even for your household. You can't do this. You can't organize the household entirely on your own, essentially. So I feel like we are a team. That's important. I many times tell my colleagues that are over here that, look, I'm happy to be the bad person that asks for things for you all, us all, that people don't like. I'm happy to be the be the one whose neck is on the line, and person that is responsible for everything, making sure everything is right, and when things are not right, to stand up and say, yeah, shots to be fired at me. I'm happy to be that person, and I think the reason for that is that the team has really been fantastic, and it's never there are three kinds of people on our team. I would say here, those that are my colleagues in IIT Madras Chennai campus that come on deputation like me. Mine is a longer term deputation, but there are others that come for maybe little bit shorter periods of time. They've been fantastic. We have new faculty that have been hired directly to Zanzibar. And these people have leapt off the cliff saying that my career is going to be in this IIT Madras campus in Zanzibar. Nobody knows where it is even. It's like you swim along the Indian Ocean. You'll reach Zanzibar sometime. But they've taken this leap of faith and they are fantastic. And the third is staff that are local, that do a lot of our administrative work, that handle the hostel, that do the financial accounting, serve as executive assistants, and so on. All these three populations that are our team over here have been so fantastic that I feel like standing up for me, standing up for them, ensuring that they are able to have really aspirational success in their careers, and of course, making sure that the institution evolves in a really meaningful, spectacular growth path.
No, thank you. And of course, like you mentioned, it's so interesting that you've said that, okay, you have been in the minority since your undergraduate days. So it was something that did not phase you when you were, in various leadership positions as well. And having a community of support, like you said, one cannot bring about any change by themselves, right? You need that team, you need that community of support and people who believe in doing the work together. I'm also curious to know, what do you think, now that you are in this position of authority, so to speak, and you have this team, what do you think are some of the ways that other women in STEM can be lifted up to build confidence and take on leadership positions, as well as what are some of the strategies or thoughts you have on retaining more women in STEM? Because, like we say, that there is a leaky pipeline, right, in STEM. So, what are some of the ways that we can retain more women and encourage and prepare them for leadership positions and have more women in leadership positions?
It's not an easy problem to solve or a question to answer, I think. At least in STEM, what I've seen is that the difference between men and women intellectually is very less. I mean, it's non-existent. It's literally intellectually, you cannot really say that we are different as women or men from each other. So inherently, there is no reason for us women to be not in the have the same opportunities, aspirations as men. There's the societal side. There's, of course, the biological side of things, which we do need to try to solve for sure. But I think importantly, I don't know, maybe this is not entirely right or not entirely wrong, but importantly, I feel that aspirationally, like if a young man and a young woman are equally aspirational in what they want from their studies, from their career, within or outside STEM, I think that we've cracked the problem then, because they will drive it then. Rather than a whole heavy baggage of all of us, let's work together to make this little path for this set of people. It will help, but maybe not in a scalable manner. But if every child feels the same, that they feel that the opportunities ahead of them, what they can aspire for in their life and in their career is really the same, irrespective of gender, I think that will really change things, because then those are the people that will drive the change in the right way. Like we can make a lot of policies, restrictive type of policies, and force the issue. And maybe we should do a little bit. And in terms of numbers, at least making a policy and forcing the percentages to improve has, I think, mattered. But beyond the point, the biggest change is going to come when you feel that you are the same irrespective of gender, and you can go forward in a path of your choice, that you have all the choice ahead of you. Having said that, this sounds very sort of, long agenda, long-term agenda. I think we can do things. We just have to talk, build a little more awareness, both among men and women, that you should make your choice, right? Not a societal type of choice. And right now, you have information at your fingertips. It's not like when I grew up. By the way, I sent my first email when I was in my 4th year of college. And at that, how did I send that email? I wrote down on a piece of paper and I gave it to my friend who was a graduate student, and she typed it and sent it. So this now I'm sure that if we didn't have video on, we would both of us be looking at our emails on our phones. And in fact, my driver yesterday, the one here, we taught him a little bit how to operate computers and so on. And he sent me an email. It's called Barua Pepe in Swahili. And he said, Madam, I have sent you a Barua Pepe. So, and while you're on, you have access to all of this information. You can write to people, you can Google, you can find information. And so I hope that empowering ourselves to make the right choice and building awareness that is possible will happen more and more. And we can drive that a little bit. We can drive by talking to groups of people, making our exams different. Like now in my class, and also classes, the way we teach. For example, in all of my classes now, I ask students to write about what they understood, didn't understand, reflect upon the class a little bit. These are things that make people think and not go down some path that somebody else has set for you. And of course, as leaders, I think there is responsibility to mindfully think about how you're building your institution, your cohorts, your meeting rooms, your committees, who you're nominating for various roles, how you're protecting in academia. That's important. How you're protecting the time of your male versus your female colleagues.
No, these are all excellent points. So building awareness, enforcing certain policies, being mindful on campuses, and of course, in the long term, like you rightly said, teaching our children that, you can aspire to anything and be anything that you want to be, irrespective of your gender or other identities, which is so important. So I have two questions now which are connected to this. One thing very interestingly, you said that, we have information at our fingertips now, that you can Google, you can, find people, you can learn more about, more women in STEM or pretty much anything. So my two questions to you are that, one, what advice would you give to young girls or students, anybody aspiring to a career in STEM? And secondly, like you said, with information being so easily available, is there a role that digital mentorship can play in fostering or, nurturing these aspirations of girls in the future?
What do you mean by digital mentorship?
Whether it is, going through podcasts like this one, or social media such as YouTube influencers. There are women in science or people in science who are creating these YouTube videos or have Instagram or Twitter accounts where they talk about their work, and you often see like young girls going and finding more information that, okay, there are these women, there are people who look like me who have done so and so I can do it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, lovely. So message-wise, same for all young people, is that work hard and make good choices that are yours. Literally, it has to sit right with you, even if it is in the moment. I think you trust yourself, and if you go down a path, you can always have regrets, maybe I should have taken this fork, etc. But you can make it your own. For example, there was nothing written that at my birth that I should be a chemical engineer. In fact, when because it's so JEE rank dependent, right? So when it was chemical engineering for me, I, had the usual 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds fighting with their parents saying, no, this doesn't, I want to do that, I want to do this. Not chemical engineering, who does chemical engineering and stuff like that. But I had a lot of yarn from my father's friends. Father was very, I think, good about this. He said, go talk to my friends. He's a physics professor. I've talked to him. He's an IITian from a long time ago. Go talk to him. Here's a math professor. So like that. So I talked to all these various people in academia, of course, so that they knew what the IIT brand was about. What I think managed to do, or I guess that was what was mentored. Or that's how I was mentored. That made this choice, made it my own. Right. And I genuinely, there's nothing to not love about chemical engineering. I love it. I feel like young people, if they work very hard and then make a choice with all the information that you have at the current moment, but then own that choice and, put in everything you need to for yourself inside you, joy and success and fulfillment that you're seeking. I think that will really matter. Both of these things, I think, will matter a lot, because you do need to be happy, and you'll be happy if you feel constantly, if you're getting feedback to yourself that your choice is the correct, that you made is the correct. Now, about this digital mentorship, I know social media has a very bad rap, especially with my generation. They're like, oh, this is, you're wasting your time on Instagram and so on. And I know that there are several dark shades to it, which are wrong and exploitative and so on. But having said all that, I'm a big fan. I know I want to mention a couple of things that I really love that I've seen on social media. One is a woman, she was a postdoc in chemical engineering, but now she's a professor. So she's got a job as a professor now. She makes these coloring books, for adults, because nowadays that's very trendy. I think that they say that it's meditative, it helps you relieve stress and so on. But the topics of the drawings she makes are about science, and of course, women in science. It's called something, I don't remember, Color Me PhD or something like that. So she's kept at it. I've been watching her for several years. And I think that's lovely, because she has not compromised on anything, right? Because she did her PhD in STEM and she did her postdoc at MIT, top chemical engineering department, secured herself an academic position, which is not easy to do. And meanwhile, she's pursuing this passion, and she's integrated that with a messaging and a life. I think that's a great role model. That's great role modeling, I think. And I love that. And there's a second thing, and she is, I don't know her. Neither of these people are people I know, by the way, just follow on social media. In real life, no idea what even they look like. This other one, she's a teacher. She's a chemistry teacher. And she's been making this series of posts about chemicals, and they're typically poisons also, but also other chemicals that make big appearances in romance novels. So she reads a lot of romance novels, and then she'll take the whatever chemical that shows up over there and explain the chemistry. And she says that, it's slightly, obviously it could be slightly wrong in some way, the way they put it, they incorporate the chemistry into the novel. They may not be, the writers may not be experts, and they may not have the wherewithal to seek expert consultation. But whatever it is, from her viewpoint, it makes it really fun. So it's like she's teaching the chemistry, but the hook is through in this romance novel. This is how NaOH, something like that. And it makes sense, it doesn't make sense, pH is so much and stuff like that. And she shares lots of scientific information, but with that story angle. I think both of these, sorry, I have to mention a third one. He was my student, and he's done really well with his PhD and postdoc, and he's a professor now also, and he studies organisms, usually small ones. I think he's done some work with a certain type of spider and so on. But his chemical engineering is about how fluids move. So there's some interface between those things that he does. The work doesn't matter. I think what I want to say is that one time he had a scientific publication, a top-notch scientific publication. Okay, imagine a journal article in chemical engineering, how heavy, dense mathematical equations like of this size, and those figures, graphs that give you a headache even if you look at it. Something like that is typically how our journal articles are. His article, it was whatever it was, but he made a thread on Twitter which described one step by step the findings, and beautiful visuals, and every statement accompanied by a really beautiful visual, so that you read through it. Of course, he's not the only one that does it. I'm seeing few people are it's like parsing your really boring scientific article and helping people consume it in a way that is good for 21st century, not for 1950s. So things like this. So I think all these are passive, right? Not the kind of mentoring that you mentioned, which is very specifically what are the needs, like what are, for example, problems a woman PhD scholar in electrical engineering may be facing. So let's document it. Let's make a room full or a group of people that can on social media talk about this and refer to it. I think it's important, and I don't know if this is what you had in mind, but
Oh,
for
this is
me, yeah,
better than what I had in mind. This is very exciting.
I don't know. And all the tools, and there is a lot of nonsense also out there, but tools for how to read research articles, how to how to use Chat GPT, right? No, you don't have to sit in a class anymore and do that. And you're getting all of these online in a almost a casual man. You're learning, but in a casual, almost informal setting. And one time I haven't had time though, but if I was focused a lot on teaching at this moment, right, I'd use all of these things that people have developed. For example, there's this 7 taps, and it's you can make a small story, and inside that you can include polls, you can have quizzes, you can ask questions and collect feedback from people. I don't remember why they developed it. It's not for this use. But I wanted to, I used this for, not for a chemical engineering class, although I intended to, but I used it for promotion of IIT Madras that we did in another country. And we gave the audience this game to play, the 7 taps game to play. So they would see, they'd get a little bit of information and a photo or so about IIT Madras. Then we'd ask them a question and then answer that. So we were also interacting with them while building awareness. So yeah, things like that. I think it matters. Your podcast, I think, is lovely. Some of my undergraduate students did get together and make a couple of podcasts where they in detail analyzed what they felt was missing in their lived experience as women undergraduates in IIT Madras. And I know that from the traction it received, that it helped the next set of students, 4-5 years younger than them, to know that what they were facing was not their me only problem. It was a bigger problem, and I think it enabled them to push for small bits of change so that things could be better. So I think it matters, definitely.
These are excellent examples. Thank you so much for sharing that, and for sharing your advice of making your informed choices with all the information that you have, and making it your own. I think that is so important, especially now that we're inundated with so many options, right? There are so many different courses that have come up, and things like even I haven't heard of, right? Even after my generation, I'm hearing of all of these courses that have come up, which weren't there even in my time. So yeah, that's absolutely wonderful advice. So my very last question to you is, at this stage of your career, what are your goals and aspirations?
So when I was in high school, I had all these, the dreams were, I think they were more in good colored, not hazy outlines, etc. But frankly, right now, I'm hyper focused on IITM Zanzibar. So live, eat, breathe IITM Zanzibar. And this is a piece of advice I also got before I signed on for this. And from a very renowned person who's built institutions. And what he said was, you'll feel conflicted. You'll feel like, there's my previous life as a researcher, teacher. And am I giving up that one in moving to this role, which is everything about this role is new. Every morning, the set of things that I do are a complete 100% different than any Monday morning I've had through the course of my 20-year career. But he said, just go all out on this, was his advice. So, and I feel like that I nodded, of course, because I was like, maybe one should consider this advice and see how it sits for me. But 3 months I've been here, that has been valuable for me, because there's no tension about should I be doing other things, etc. I've kept that completely away, focused absolutely on this IITM Zanzibar. I know that, based on my previous experiences, for example, in Women's Forum, time really flows very fast in these things. So people think that it's a position. It's not a position. It's a responsibility that you've been given, and you're given. It's a time-bound responsibility. So, for example, I have this right now. I have 2.5 years ahead of me, and everything that I dream about or visualize for this campus, that is the time I have, right? I can't expect that I'll hang on to this after when somebody else is in my position. Of course, I can pass on my suggestions to them at that point of time. It's not about ownership of those things in a negative way, but I'm saying genuinely that this is at the beginning is when it is important for me to ensure that I put in my best over here. So personally, I have maybe, I don't know if it's good or bad, but my personal side, I'm happy to not think about now and focus a lot on the institution, what's needed for the growth of the institution. One more thing my husband said is that now is a point in your time when you need to have a microscope in one eye and a telescope in the other. So everything, the mundane things, Monday through Friday, and then the big picture things that may come into fruition only 6-8 months, even a year from now. All of these are on my plate, and they're exciting also. So I won't complain. I don't think I want it to be any different. So that's what I want to do, the absolute best, that this will grow. And, the IITs are from the 50s and 60s. Their growth story, while it is fantastic, the growth story of this campus, this IIT campus, has to be different because it's modern, and we know a lot of good and bad things that we've done. Keep the good, leave out the bad, in a very open-minded manner to lots of people about it. And people are very genuinely invested in this and want to talk about this Zanzibar project, so to speak. One of the things they said is that, look, as IIT Madras, let's not make the same mistakes again, because here's an opportunity to not repeat old mistakes. So that is also, I think, a very interesting framing. So all of it is in this for me. Of course, keep healthy, keep really active, and make sure that is not going to come in, because I am living alone over here. Have very good friends, colleagues around, but whatever family household that I've been used to which I've set up, right? My husband and I have spent a lot of effort to do that, and I visit every month and a half or so, but I'm living alone here, so definitely I intend fully to take care of my own health, but it's mostly to ensure that I'm doing whatever is needed for the growth of this institution in the right way.
Wonderful. That's a lot on your plate for the next 2.5 years at least that you are looking forward to, which is great because we are really excited to follow your journey, to follow IITM Zanzibar's journey as well, to see where the institution goes. And like you said, the past is the past, but here is an opportunity to do things differently, to do things better, to build a more inclusive in campus or environment for students, all across to learn.
Thank you. I think you guys are doing something very important. And I'm sure you don't get the credit you deserve for it because you think it's a bunch of women talking. But I hope that you get a lot of exposure for the activities that you do. And 100% it is really important. And I'm so glad that you thought of me and gave me this opportunity.
No, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's been wonderful learning from you, listening to your experiences. And I hope many, many people learn from you and are inspired by your journey to take up a STEM career.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. At STEM the Gap, our goal is to bridge the gender imbalances in STEM through multidisciplinary research, policy, and practice. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel and stay connected with us through our website and social media pages. Links in description.